On now to another subject. Ray, we're so busy here. We have so many things to talk about.
We're kind of crazy busy here on the air. We're crazy busy.
We are crazy busy, and that is the name of the new book by Kevin DeYoung. How's that for a segue?
That's good.
Senior pastor of University Reformed Church in East Lansing, Michigan, who he also blogs at the Gospel Coalition website, which is a great website, by the way, if you want to keep up with things that are happening in our culture from a Christian perspective. Kevin, welcome to the program.
Hey, it's great to be here.
So you have written a book called Crazy Busy, a mercifully short book about a really big problem. And it is mercifully short. It's just over 100 pages, but is packed with good information. So let me ask you on the subject of busyness in a Christian's life. This is really just a time management issue, right? I mean, this is really the problem. Christians are not managing their time. If they just get the 1 Minute Manager, the book, and some of these other books, they will be able to fit everything in. Isn't that the real problem?
That's a great question because that is how a lot of people approach busyness, just one more tool or one more technique. And, certainly I'm sure some common sense that we can learn from books like that. But really what I think is missing often from the discussion are the underlying spiritual issues and spiritual dangers. On the one hand, it seems like the Bible doesn't really talk about busyness. I mean, it's not a book to give us time management. And yet it does say a lot about our souls and the kind of life we live. And you think of, just for one example, Jesus' parable about the sower and the soils, that seed which went into the ground and began to grow, began to sprout up, and then what chokes out the life? It's the thorns. It's the worries of life, the deceitfulness of wealth, Jesus said. It's all the stuff that keeps us occupied. So in this country, I think busyness probably kills more Christians than bullets do. I mean, it's what chokes out our spiritual life if we allow it to.
Kevin, one of the points you make in the book is that we're all busy, and there's a sense in which busyness is, whatsoever your hand finds to do it with all your might.
Mm-hmm.
Then busyness is a part of life for all of us. Give us some help here. What's a sign? How would we know if our busyness somehow has moved us away from God's priorities and we're just spinning our wheels on things that don't really matter?
You're right that, in one sense, we are supposed to be busy. I mean, work comes in the garden before the fall. It's not a result of the fall. Now, the thorns and the thistles are, but God wants us to be busy with work. If we really care for people, we're going to be burdened with other people's problems at times. But when does busyness become something more dangerous? Well, I think it's when our pride gets entangled, and this happens so easily, and sometimes it's very subtle. Pride is the villain with a thousand faces. It shows up not just in boasting, but in people-pleasing, in working feverishly so we can prove ourselves or have prestige or some kind of perfectionism. I think one of the diagnostic questions I try to ask myself when I get busy, okay, am I doing this so that I might do good to others or so that I might look good before others? And we may not always know for sure, but that at least helps me get going in the right direction. Am I doing this mainly because I want people to think well of me, I don't want to disappoint people, or am I really trying to do good with this work, to care for others, to serve, and to do it to the glory of God?
Kevin, and we're talking to Kevin DeYoung, who is senior pastor of University Reformed Church in East Lansing, Michigan. He's author of a new book, Crazy Busy. This is an excellent resource for Christians, a mercifully short book about a really big problem. Kevin, one of the chapters in your book is titled "The Terror of Total Obligation. You are trying to do what God does not expect you to do." And of course, this can cover a number of different issues in the Christian life. But let me just give a personal example of something. Early on in my ministry in the pastorate, I was a youth pastor, an associate pastor, and I remember being burdened because I received something in the mail from a pro-life group in the state in which they were basically asking for ministers to come and protest at the abortion clinic and kind of chastise those who were not doing that by saying, if you're not willing to get arrested, then you don't care about the issue of abortion. And that really, I was a young man, and that really bothered me because I questioned my own commitment. And in praying about it and talking to others in my life, I realized that if I went and got arrested, and there may come a time to do that on certain issues, but if I went and got arrested, who would care for the flock that was under, my leadership? And at that point, I thought, I've got to figure out ways to do what God has called me to do, and maybe God calls some people to do that other, but He can't. I don't think God calls everyone to do everything, and that's part of the message of your book, isn't it?
Yeah, I've had so many experiences similar to that. I remember, arriving in seminary, just being overwhelmed by all the opportunities. There's this early morning prayer group and this noon prayer group, and then these people who are doing evangelism and these people who are concerned about missions, and all of it was good. And I think I've always been the sort of person who feels a strong sense of obligation. I ought to volunteer, I ought to raise my hand, I need to do a good job. And you realize how overwhelming the Christian life can be. And I think as evangelical Christians, we're very activist, and that's good, but it also can be debilitating. If we think the problem of world hunger and clean water and AIDS and problems with our government and go down the line, let alone your family, your church. I mean, if everything is your responsibility, we'll just live with this crushing sense of guilt and failure. And you see, Jesus had to set priorities in his life. Here's the Son of God who can heal people just by a touch or a word, and yet he says in Mark 1, I have to go to the other towns and preach, for that's why I came out. He realized my ministry here is not, first of all, to heal, though that's a good thing. I need to go and to preach. And unless we have a similar kind of sense of priority, we will go through life, and many Christians do, just feeling like every good opportunity is another occasion to feel terrible, to feel guilty, because really we're responsible for all of it, when the only one who can be responsible for all of it is God.
We're talking with Kevin DeYoung. He's the author of Crazy Busy, a mercifully short book about a really big problem published by Crossway. Kevin, you say we need margin in our lives. You say that's actually a really important concept. Tell us about margin, and tell us, if we don't have any, how can we get some?
Well, I'd like to know. I'm writing this. I worked on this book not because I have it figured out, but because I know I have a problem. And my congregation, my kids would probably say, yeah, Dad, yeah, Pastor, well, how do you get margin in your life? Because I've realized many times in my life there's reverse margin. What we should have are some margin, some flexibility, some breaks in how we plan our days so that the unexpected can happen. We can respond to our child when he's having a hard day. We can make that extra phone call. We can allow someone to interrupt us in the office. But so often we plan our days with no margin or reverse margin, where we look and think, well, if everything goes perfectly and somebody cancels their appointment, maybe I'll be able to get all my things done. And it seems like, well, that's really heroic, but in the long run, we're actually not serving people, because we end up being more irritable, more impatient, not doing our best with the people and the problems right in front of us. And so in an effort to try to do everything, we end up doing the things we do much less effectively. And so one of the impulses I hope people pick up from the book is, this is not just about, hey, you deserve to live a better life and quit stressing out. It really is about, how do we best serve the people under our care, serve in the responsibilities God has given us, and how do we do that well, not only now, but for years and decades and however long the Lord gives us.
We've been talking to Kevin DeYoung, who's senior pastor of University Reformed Church in East Lansing, Michigan. Kevin, do you have a website other than blogging on thegospelcoalition.com? Do you have a website that people can go and maybe find some of your stuff?
Our church's website is universityreformedchurch.org. I blog at Gospel Coalition. Twitter is at Rev Kev DeYoung, or they can, go to crossway.org and learn more about the book.
All right, and where's the book available?
It's on Amazon and online now, and it should be in all sorts of brick-and-mortar stores by the end of the week.
All right, the book is Crazy Busy, a mercifully short book about a really big problem. It's full of wisdom and practical, biblically based advice for the busy Christian, and only 117 pages. Folks, it is a bargain and will help you, and you must find time to read it. Kevin, thank you so much for writing this book and for being a guest on today's issues.
Hey, glad to.
All right. Well, folks,